The most influential ism in the country today appears to be Hindutva. It has taken a long time for this ideology to come of age. But what happened to the other ideological movements that began in the early 20th century? The RSS will turn 100 years old next year, but so will the Communist Party of India. Ambedkarism, Marxism, liberalism, Dravidianism, feminism, Gandhiism. What role are these great big isms of the 20th century playing in the 21st century? What relevance do they have today?
I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an a-leprechaun.
Why have there been casteism existing in the country still today?
Feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal
So the
rights.
nature of the system is to be as mean and rotten as you can, to try to maximize profit.
I'm Sudipto Mondal, and welcome to this episode of What's Your Ism?
Hello and welcome to the next new episode of What's Your Ism? I am, of course, turned up in my best suit because today I'm meeting an MP. This is perhaps the first time we're meeting an MP in our show, and this is a man who was once a civil servant from Tamil Nadu, or rather hailing from Tamil Nadu, a civil servant in Karnataka, and today he's an MP. No, he is not Kannan Gopinathan or Annamalai. We have with us Mr. Sasikanth Senthil. Thank you so much,
Hi,
Senthil,
Sudipto.
for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And I did that deliberately to mention the other two bureaucrats because there was this entire season in which a lot of civil servants gave up their service and went into politics. And there was, of course, R.S. Praveen Kumar as well. But here you are, and in Parliament you won. How did that happen, and why do you think it didn't happen in the other cases? Let's start with Annamalai.
I think, we all resigned. Probably Kannan and me had a sync in why we resigned. But I think Annamalai and the others had different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the background in which Annamalai resigned, but when he resigned, the reason he told was that he had some, he went to
Rishikesh?
not Rishikesh.
Some
Yeah. But he had a kind of change of mind and he wanted to do something else. It was something very vague like that.
Yeah.
But when Kannan resigned very clearly for the abrogation, against the abrogation of Article 370.
So did you actually.
Yeah. Mine was slightly broader than that. 370 was certainly a trigger, but then for me, the kind of politics which was going on, largely I felt was taking us in a different direction, and I thought there will be a longer fight in this entire thing. So I had to resign, and I had written a letter very clearly quoting why I resigned, and from there that journey started.
Yeah, in that sense, if you talk about ideological clarity at the point of resignation, it's you and then there is R.S. Praveen Kumar.
Mm-hmm.
I think both of you are very clear why you're doing this, where you're headed, and that you are deeply invested in the ideological fight. Is that correct?
It is, and even Kannan. Kannan was the first one to resign, in fact, and I followed him after some time, and then R.S. Praveen Kumarji followed. But I'm not very clear about Praveenji, but I knew Kannan why. But for me, it was a larger, because I was watching this politics for a long time from the sidelines, and having seen 2002 Gujarat, and having had the misfortune.
What were you doing then? You were a student?
I was preparing for civil service, yes. And having had the misfortune to see the same person come as the Prime Minister of this country, which again was done by a lot of maneuvering within the party. I waited for 5 years to see how India is going to react, because by that time I was very clear with that kind of politics. I had a confidence that the that may not survive in a very pluralistic society.
Yeah.
But in 2019, when they came back again with a larger vote share, that's when I thought now the fight has to be on different levels. And I thought I should primarily engage in it. That's why I got out of the service.
So this show, Senthil, as you might have guessed, it's called "What's Your Ism," and we try to get to where a person's ideological motivations are. What is the core of your, political self? But before that, it must have been very personally satisfying for you to see what happened to the BJP in Tamil Nadu in that case. And there are so many takeaways which are from your perspective, from where you stand. I suppose from where we stand, which can be only described as thrilling. Why? Because the person who literally dominated headlines in Tamil Nadu for almost for well over 2 years, creating one big news event after another, raising issues of very hardline Hindutva and those kind of things all over the press. He got so much attention, and Annamalai lost the elections, and it was feared at one point that he's opening up new ground, fresh ground in Tamil Nadu for that feral kind of politics. And then what happens is a person like you comes and wins with a margin which is larger than any other, even the other DMK candidates. DMK's heartland is Tamil Nadu, and you managed to pull this off. Do you want to quickly reflect on this particular thing? I mean, it must have given you a lot of pleasure, I'm sure, personally.
Yeah, but for me, there was a larger fight going on. I was heading the campaign, the central campaign for the Congress. I have been working in that for the last 7 months, staying in Delhi and traveling to different parts of the country.
No, wait a minute. You're saying that while you were a candidate in Tamil Nadu, you were also doing your war room stuff?
Yeah. I was.
Oh, you didn't give that up?
No.
Oh, I was under the assumption that now that you're contesting, somebody else must be handling.
No.
Okay.
I didn't give up, and I didn't want to give up because that was my primary intention why I resigned my job and joined this. So I had put up a lot of
systems. Sorry to cut you, but you sound like that A-type personality, no? That kid who's in the basketball team also, plus his first ranker also.
Yeah.
So you won with the largest margin in your own constituency while you went all over the country.
So I'm not that A-type. I'll tell you how I won, right? Okay. So my fight was primarily there. That's where I had put my mind and heart in, and kind of worked for the last 6-7 months because we had a lot of work to do organizationally. I also on communication, narratives, and other things. Previously, I had worked back to back with Karnataka and Rajasthan, so that experience, gave me a lot of buoyancy to move towards the national campaign. So while I was doing that, I had a call that I might have to contest, and the party is willing to put me as a candidate. And I was absolutely thrilled because for a person like me, the background that we come from, it was a big thing for us, and we never imagined that we can enter parliament.
First generation MP.
First generation MP. Second generation educated, first generation MP, whatever. So then the question was, now I have a big responsibility here, but then I had a wonderful team with me which I had already put up, and every one of them said that your election is in the first phase, just go and come. And then I left on the last day of nomination. I went and gave my nomination, and 19 days of campaign, and then 20th day I was back. So it was not me who won the election by my own credentials. It was the people of Tamil Nadu and the organization and the people who worked for me on the ground.
And your ally, the DMK?
Yeah, that's what, my entire India bloc. This time when I went there, I could see that already there were, my campaign was almost like victory celebration. People were telling me, boss, you go back, you're winning. So I was like, already the people had made up their mind. There are many reasons. They were happy with they were very happy to oppose BJP. They were very happy to have a new candidate,
Yeah.
and my experience and credentials also matter in a society like ours. Ex-IAS, collector,
Yeah. Yeah.
that kind of thing. And then after I, even if I, before I go, how a person is also precedes. So all that put together, they were extremely happy, and they already have made up their mind that they're going to get me a victory. But then I thought, yes, I will win, but I didn't trust all those people who said 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, and I said, okay, one vote also, it's victory.
What is the margin again?
So my margin finally came up to 5,72,000.
Right.
So it was a very big margin. So that overwhelmingly shows across the party they have voted. Now it is not only the alliance which is voted, across the party they have voted. So I wouldn't say that I cracked this. I was just like a doll sitting there and then doing this.
In fact,
you know.
you often mention, I remember in a couple of talks, and I think even this interview to Sabha, you talked about the x-axis, y-axis, which is the organizational and the ideological.
Yeah.
In the case of your constituency, I suppose the two things came together quite organically.
Yeah. And what I felt was Tamil Nadu's core political understanding is solid, at least in my constituency and whatever I saw. And they were ready to listen to what I'm telling, what I'm going to promise them. So I had a very basic promise that, I told them very clearly that, see, I may not tell you that I'll solve all your problems, but in the next 5 years, I'll be one amongst you. That's the promise I gave. And the moment I said that, they were all, yes.
Right.
So my constituency itself is a very, very different constituency. There's a lot of working class people. They're really very good natured, very wonderful people. So I think it's a combination of all that, and absolutely, I wouldn't attribute even 5% of that victory to something which I did.
So you're not that A-type personality.
Absolutely not. But then we did a lot of work for the national campaign. That I am slightly happy about. But this is completely the people and the party worker.
And the state, you think?
And
you
the
think
state.
You think something like this could have happened in another?
That's what I mean. The people of the state and the party
Tamil Nadu
workers.
is a slightly unique case. You would agree, right?
Absolutely.
But now tell me about Tamil Nadu. So of course, any progressive would take heart from the fact that here is a state in which common people talk high ideology. But then, given that you come from the background that you do, you're an Ambedkarite Dalit. That is where they say Tamil Nadu's contradiction is. Before even I point to those contradictions, what is your reading of Tamil Nadu as a state? Where do you think the fault lines lie? Are there any fault lines?
There are. We had a social movement in the 50s and 60s, which really, took us along to a large extent.
The Justice Party.
Yeah, the Justice Party and the self-respect movement by by Tandai Periyar. But then largely it questioned a lot of status quo on many things, including patriarchy, caste, and everything. But slowly on the way, that path was lost, and it became very anti-Brahminical alone. The question of caste was not subjected to much of a scrutiny, but it was anti-Brahminical.
Are you saying it was anti-Brahmin, not anti-caste?
Anti-Brahmin, not anti-caste. The movement started with good intentions. It went on for a period with good intentions. Periyar even tried to bring women up. Patriarchy is an extension of caste, and it's all works together. But then later it became only anti-Brahmin, and then caste was never a question. In fact, it gave a passport to many to actually propagate caste. So earlier you had the guilt that you are not working much on caste, but now being anti-Brahmin sometimes masquerades as you are anti-caste. But then
Yeah.
On the other side, you propagate caste in many levels.
Yeah.
That is the reason why so many honor killings and so many things, atrocities happen still in Tamil Nadu. So this is something which I think we should work about. And if at all, if there is some place which we can work on all these things, is Tamil Nadu, because the people are already open to these ideas, open to discussing these things. And I am absolutely confident if you give a kind of politics which makes them understand this, I think it will work.
What you said was, a few sentences short of actually criticizing your principal ally in that state. Because when you say that Periyar's movement was derailed, you have, who are the legatees of Periyar in that sense? There is the ANNA-DMK or there is the DMK. Do you think that there have been, the AIDMK for now is, we can even like paint them in that bracket of, okay, they are part of that universe which has no problem doing work with the BJP. The DMK.
But see, I'm not. Periyar's movement was much beyond all these things.
Of course.
Much beyond parties. But
if you ask today anybody, what is the Periyar's party, they're not going to say Dravida Kazhagam. They're going to say DMK, more likely. Or DMK people own that legacy and say...
No, Periyar is owned by a lot of people.
Of course they do.
Even people in Congress, Periyar in fact came from Congress. He was the PCC president for some time, right? So the way of I think, today if you go to Tamil Nadu, so somewhere this whole idea of questioning caste has not happened, even from the civil society. It has been completely anti-Brahmin, which I feel, can be a part of this whole thing, but then that's not the whole truth, right? If you are not able to understand this hierarchical structure and how caste even plays inside the minds of Dalits sometimes, you are never going to get out of this this whole mess. So somewhere I find that as a very big fault line. But then it had its own advantages also, like for the idea of bringing in social justice as the main plank of governance. That has not happened in any other place except Tamil Nadu. People might talk about infrastructure, education, whatever, but social justice was the plank. That was the biggest contribution of the Dravidian movement, and we are all beneficiaries of that. And but the idea that this alone, pulling up people alone will bring out caste without ideologically questioning it was also not a great approach. Somewhere I also felt Ambedkar, the idea of Ambedkar or the thoughts of Ambedkar ji was not propagated very clearly in the space.
You think that alongside Periyar, if there was a healthy layer of Ambedkarite reading, you think it would have been more effective?
It would have been, but it may not only be reading. It's all about leadership also.
Discourse building, because there's a very rich tradition of literature, films, and all of this in this Dravidian consciousness.
Yes. But it had to happen. But the political space was so strong that a formula was working, so it went on like that. But that I think is the biggest flaw, in my opinion. Whoever I speak to, even intellectuals, they have an idea of a Brahmin way of seeing caste or a Dalit way of seeing caste, not caste as such, right? So that's the.
Do you want to explain further? I want to.
So it will be always seen from the idea of from an oppressed or being oppressed.
Okay.
When this is the prism in which you see caste, then you tend to actually not see how it plays in the whole structure, right? So there are many castes which are neither oppressed nor oppressors, and they think good about that caste. They say that what is wrong with this? We are living like a
illustrate, as you go along. If you can.
So if you take like take industrial or a trader caste,
okay,
right? So they are neither feeling oppressed or they oppress somebody. and they're extremely happy and proud about their caste. They don't see any reason why you are questioning me, because either I don't have that feeling nor I am doing anything to anybody. But this is the way in which we preserve our culture, which is the way we preserve our own methods. So what is wrong in it? This is the argument that they would give. But then we'll have to understand the caste system itself. The whole weight of the caste system will fall on the Dalits, right? But by propagating this idea of endogamy and propagating this idea of being inside one group, you tend to avoid seeing others. You tend to avoid sympathizing with others, empathizing with others. You tend not to see the whole structure.
Right.
So I think there we needed to talk about caste from a very, uh, what it is actually, and then its relationship to patriarchy, its relationship to, the idea of merit, and all that has to be spoken about.
I will come back to this when we are talking more about your party. I was just trying to provoke you and see if you can say something about the DMK, and if you make a slip somewhere, but you were very careful.
No,
It's
see,
a-
but
anyway.
it's not about any party. It's about. See, again, I'm telling you, I don't see this fight as parties fights.
Sure.
It's between two mindsets, is what I feel in this country. There is a mindset which believes in hierarchy, which believes the society has to stay in this hierarchical way, and there is a mindset which believes in equity. Right, these two mindsets are there everywhere. It is there within bureaucrats, it's there within journalists, it's there within a party workers, within the same party.
Yeah.
So it's the fight between these two things, and this fight has been happening in this country for a long time, not today. What did Buddha revolt against?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This fight has been going for a long time. Today it is manifesting as Congress, BJP, or whatever, but then the primary fight is between these two mindsets, and these mindsets are everywhere.
And these mindsets, how they develop, is also such an interesting and important question. In the case of every one of those people who is a kind of a discourse builder, somebody who is part of the political conversation, the interest always is, where did the journey start?
Yeah.
And that's something I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
In your case, you go away to do an engineering degree, which gives me the impression of a young boy who's very good in his studies, who's very focused. Because generally the engineering kind of youngsters are not looking left or right or anything. They're just looking to crack that entrance exam. I'm very curious to know where your political awakening happened and what were the triggers. Do you consider yourself an Ambedkarite? I think you do, right?
See, I don't consider myself as anything, to be very frank.
Okay, tell me.
I just want to have that freedom, But I love when I see something which is appealing. I am not a very mind-based person. Also, I do a lot of introspection, idea about how I feel, how somebody might feel. Sometimes it might not be logical also, but then I get a lot of clarity from what feelings I go through. So I tend to remain in that individual space. I learn a lot, but I think what
How
drives.
come you're not a Sanghi? Let me ask you more directly. Where did you become a non-Sanghi? Because I would imagine that so often there is the Sanghi ideology is easier to get. It is more easy to get somebody in that thing than for somebody to become.
I think okay.
In college, what did you believe in? Did you
see? That's what I'm saying. Like, if you take where it comes from in me, I told you that we are the second generation educated in this thing, right? And you have a parent who is constantly reminding you of his background and how he came, and then constantly telling both of our siblings that one is for the country and one is for the house.
I heard that, yeah.
And then constantly telling that you have to look at the road that you came from, walk back on the road that you came from. So when these things are
but
constantly.
You are for the country. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you are for the country could very well come from a Sanghi father also, no?
No.
So what was it that
that's their way of saying that you are a social person. It's not that country in the context of some Sangh, but telling that you are beyond the family. This is not the only family that you have. Is a way of I remember when I was a kid, my father used to have one room kept for anybody who can come in, walk in, and stay and sleep and go for education or whatever. Our kitchen used to be continuously, in constant work. Anybody could come for eating or anything. My father never had
And
that.
this is happening in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah. He always kept it like that so that anybody could come who doesn't have a house can come inside, stay there. Half of the time I didn't know who this person was, but then they stayed in my house. So I have seen that.
Was he in any movement, anything?
No, he was
Union,
not.
nothing.
No, nothing.
Did he
He
speak
just-
about some icons?
No, nothing. No
Periyar,
icons, nothing.
Ambedkar,
No. I read very less. That's my advantage. And
Why do you say that?
I don't read much.
Mm.
I try to see things for myself in real life. I try to put myself in situation, and that's how my politics has come to me. But whenever I read whatever I read, and when I understand the essence of what it is, then I stop. From there, I build and see where it takes. So it was like this, that came from that experience with my father and my own finding of this world when I went into college to see what's this all about and how things are and how hierarchies have been built into the system and how people go through all this. And then I made my own political idea, and I always had a problem. I never went in the quest of the right things. I always went in the quest of if the of searching injustice, right? I never wanted to do a perfect world, but I could always spot injustice, and that's so easy to spot. I never found what was the right thing to do, but I always found what should not be done, and then try to stay with that and try to work in that
And your
space.
earliest such convictions were in regard to which issues?
So, when I am a software engineer,
Yeah.
and then 1 month into the job, I realized this is not the work I want to do. I can't just work with non-living machines and stuff.
Yeah.
I took a call there, then jumped many professions to see whether I'm socially good. I found that is working for me. My first major touch came with when I worked with an NGO called Praxis on bonded laborers. So we worked on something called participative rural appraisal methodology of understanding bonded labor, and that's when my actual brush started. And I understood
In bonded labor, obviously, you would have encountered gender, caste.
absolutely gender, caste, hierarchy, oppression, everything
Yeah.
together. So the idea of staying with people, in their pain, is something which is very that I think defines my politics. I don't try to see what is the best thing to do. I'm not in that level of but I keep constantly watching for issues.
And that is how I actually saw you. I mean, I've heard obviously a lot about you. Both of us have been in the state for many years, but for some reason we haven't interacted that much. And I always heard you described as a person who has a sense of right and wrong, but is not ideological. I mean, right now in this conversation, Prajwal, my colleague, has come along for this interview. He's sitting over here because he was in Udupi, Mangalore when you were there.
Yeah.
And this is the thing he was talking about, saying that when somebody who had a very keen sense of right and wrong, saying this is wrong, this mall is doing some illegality, I will, can at least facilitate the exposure. I can give some information to some journalists and it can become a big issue and all that. So that's one thing, but not very ideological.
Yeah.
Yeah, and despite which you take your oath and you do everything, and next thing we know, you go and say Jai Bhim over there. For those of us watching, many eyes turn moist because that is not a slogan you hear in Parliament very often. And people who know about the slogan know that it's a very loaded slogan. It is something that has come after years and years of Now I remember when I went to Rohit Vemula when he passed away. I had gone to the campus. That is the first time in my career after so many years that I saw upper caste journalists, typically liberal kind of outlets which did not understand caste and did not give a damn about caste. Everybody had to turn up over there because thousands of students were protesting. Something has happened. And a very well-meaning liberal secular journalist came up to me and said, "Hey, why are they doing this? Are they right wing?" I said, "Why do you ask me that?" "They're doing Jai Bhim, Jai Bhim." I said, "Yeah, no, but Bhim." Now that person thought it's some Chota Bhim or some Bhim or something. They didn't even know up until 2016. I'm talking about a national reporter, a very prominent reporter from that thing, didn't even know what Jai Bhim is until 2016. And today, I don't think there are many journalists who don't know what Jai Bhim means. And suddenly you see there's a Sasikanth Senthil of all people, who you imagine is not very ideological, but is very focused on issues of secularism, inequality, and all of that, going over there and suddenly raising this very ideologically loaded slogan.
Yeah.
Something has happened somewhere, right? What has happened?
No, see, I also said that, you have to stop these shameful atrocities against minorities, Dalits, and Adivasis.
That can be said by anybody, by the way. That any liberal, any human can say that. You don't need to even be a leftist or a progressive. You just have to be human to say, "Boss, this has to stop." But this was very ideological. This,
see, my touch with Ambedkar ji is not. It's a very different equation I have with him. I see him as a very solid social thinker, a person who can untangle so many issues and then emotionally stay with and fight. So for me, raising that slogan was important from many angles. So I exactly cannot put it in words, but there is so much of weight to it from many angles.
நீங்க first அந்த ஸ்லோகன் வந்து எங்க கேட்டீங்க? Where did you first hear that?
Jai Bhim is what we have been telling for a long time in many of my civil society colleagues, or even when I was in service in many places. So it's not a new thing for us.
But it is definitely very loaded.
Yeah. And what better place than the parliament?
I think apart from you, only Azad said Jai Bhim, I think.
Maybe, yes.
Is it catching on in the Congress, that slogan?
Yeah, Congress.
Has Rahul Gandhi ever said Jai Bhim? I don't know.
Congress has. Yeah, I don't think he has refrained from saying. One thing, in many people he meets, he says. See, the best part about the Congress that I know is that it is open for everything. You can be a complete Jai Bhim person and then survive inside Congress, or Inqilab Zindabad, or Jai Jagat, or whatever. You can still stay inside,
and that is also where the criticism of the Congress comes from, saying that it falls for everything, it stands for nothing.
Sometimes incorporating everything might not be a bad idea. So I don't think, my personal view is, Congress in a way represents what this country is all about. And it is a microcosm of the country, the chaos, the start is everything. But then I don't think it's a bad idea.
It straddles such a wide area, right? On one side you have a Jai Bhim, on another side you have the leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, doing Jai Shivji. So you have Jai Bhim, which is essentially, I mean, the way I understand it, it is essentially anti-Sanatani. And if Baba Sahib said that, I was born a Hindu, I'm not going to die a Hindu, and if we are saying Jai Bhim to him and all of that, we are essentially invoking that whole, we have not just Ambedkar, you have a whole lot of scholars, intellectuals who, Ayotitas in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala you have Ayankali, in now modern these things, in Andhra Telangana you have Kancha Ailaya. All of these people are talking about how they are not even Hindu. And on the other hand, you have this invocation of a Shiva. And how do you see that?
So I don't see it. Initially I used to have a problem with that. But then I have understood that it is not a very bad thing to say, especially what you're connoting is very grounded. You're talking about Shiva, you're talking about Kali, you're talking about Durga, You're talking about all the tribal motifs, all the Muruga, for instance.
Mhm.
You know, they don't know the. They don't. I don't think they they endorse the Vedic idea of caste and varna and stuff like that. They have been coaxed into it, but you know, even
Actually, all
today for
these,
Shiva and
yeah.
Kali, in our village we do give a lot of things which are not accepted in the
Yes,
traditional.
alcohol, meat.
Yeah. So, but that's an identity,
Hmm.
and I don't think it's very bad to run away from. Very bad to stay with an identity.
Hmm.
Of late, whenever I go to a village, when I see people showing of identities, as long as it is not casteist.
All right, welcome back. As you can see, there was a slight disruption. The MP has been very busy since the results of the election. We were having this interview last time in Bangalore, and there was an entire list of senior leaders of the Congress party who were waiting to meet Mr. Senthil, and he had to run away, and we couldn't continue the interview. But we are back now, and as you can see, I'm not in my best suit, or the fact that the production quality is not as good. I'm doing this on my laptop. Last time we had a camera. Going forward, hopefully we'll have a better equipped crew and more people to put this together. For now, I hope you'll make do with this. Sendil, welcome back. Um,
I apologize, and I am the whole sole reason for this shift.
no, no,
And
no. That you were doing your primary job. I mean, your job
yeah,
is to go out there and be an
and good
MP.
that I have also come on a T-shirt, so I can answer you in a much more informal way.
Yeah, I'm also a little more relaxed. So yeah, in the first half, we were just setting the ground, setting the pace. Things were getting a little interesting when we were discussing ideology, and let's see where I can pick up from. So we were talking about the speech by Rahul Gandhi, and you said something very interesting. You said there's been a lot of criticism of the image of Shiva that was used, and you said that there are many types of Shiva. But then, since that discussion, I've been reading some other pieces that have appeared on the matter. Like there was a piece by Hatosh Singh Bal of the Caravan, and this very interesting and senior commentator called Ajaz Ashraf, who wrote, I think, in Midday. And they're talking about this attempt to create what is called a Hindu left, right? In terms of distinguishing it from the Hindu right, that there is something called the Hindu left. I would like you to respond to that term first, and then we'll cut deeper. How do you respond to that term, Hindu left?
Like we had you previously. I asked this question: what is your ism? So I'm a big no believer in any ism, because see, these things are all very personal, very subjective, and very situational also. It changes with situation, it changes with people. So broadly, I see it in two categories. I only see it in two categories: whether you are this person who is with equity, or whether you are this person who believe you need hierarchy in life. It's like these two managers. One believes in that tight control over the office. One believes in a relationship based control in office. So that's the two categories which I think the world is, and that's the fight which has been going on for a long time, no matter what it is. That's how I see it. So the Hindu left, that term, you know, I don't see there is, nobody can define it, nobody can know what it is. But if it is identity and the idea of empathy put together, and that's not a bad thing at all, in my opinion. It's not a bad thing at all that we have to do is, you know go away from these ideas of hierarchy. Sometimes within a religion there are set notions of hierarchy, like in the Hindu religion there is this idea of caste. If we are able to overcome that, then the identity doesn't have any problem, in my opinion.
Right, right. No, it's interesting you say that about identity, but because I referred to Hartosh's piece, it was quite a hard-hitting piece. He talks about, he questions rather. the existence, of this body of people. Does this body of people actually exist? When you talk about the Hindu left, he gives the example of the different mass movements which created a climate, which provided a discourse, which gave an agenda to the opposition to take on the BJP. And he gives several examples in that piece. He talks about the Bhima Koregaon agitation. He talks about the NRCCA, which was led primarily by Muslims. The Bhima Koregaon movement was led primarily by Dalits. Then you had the farmers' protests. It was led largely by Sikh farmers, and so on and so forth. You have different movements in the country which were looking for this, what you call as the progressive ground, the common ground among different diverse communities, that they can be brought together on these progressive agendas is what these movements were all about. And then he says, in all of this, where was the progressive Hindu? Like, by progressive Hindu, do you mean an upper caste person who has had a change of heart? Do you mean an intermediate caste person who is now part of the Congress, of the BJP fold? What exactly do you mean by that? Because if you look at how the Congress came to this position, it is because of these movements, which are very ideological in nature.
So you're asking about what is that we changed with people?
Not what is that will change, but when you say that there is a progressive group of Hindus, that they can be a good Hindu, bad Hindu, but there was no such Hindu formation identifying as Hindu as part of the different movements that we saw over the last 10 years. We saw movements of workers, we saw movements of farmers.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to essentially say is now within the Bhima Koregaon movement, let's say X number of people participated and led it. I'm sure there is a considerable amount of Hindus inside that movement also, right? People who either worshipped or got the practices and they identified themselves as a Hindu, right? One cannot deny there was absolutely no Hindu in that Bhima Koregaon movement, or neither in NRCCA movement, or any other movement. Now, when we say that, that we are, if we present ourselves as that we are against this identity, right? Then I think we are actually restricting ourselves to a very limited group, and we are also antagonizing a huge, identity which is accepted in this land for a long time. What we don't accept, basically, is about this oppressive hierarchical system called caste that comes or tags along with the Hindu system, right? And if you are able to overcome that, as Baba Sahib said, caste is just a notion. It's a notion. It's just something in your mind. It can just go out in a minute if you try, right? So if there are many people who have out of that notion, but still they identify with a belief system, a custom, or whatever it is. I don't think we should have a problem with that. I'm not calling them progressive Hindus or regressive Hindus. I'm just calling them thinking Hindus. That's all.
Fair enough. Now, whether or not they were Hindus in the Bhima Koregaon movement or the NRCCA movement or the farmers movement, or there were several spontaneous agitations like the way we saw for the Agniveer scheme. There were different movements by unemployed youth. In none of this, whether they were good Hindus or not, there were barely any Congress leaders in that. In fact, the movements were organically born out of a certain pain, out of a certain disenfranchisement, some amount of disillusionment, whatever it might have been, the trigger. The Congress was neither the trigger, not nor was it a great participant in any of these movements, but it appears that it has benefited electorally enormously as a result of the opinion created by these movements. How do you?
So, again, I have a slightly different take on this. As I told you, I agree completely with you. As a party and as identified by party leaders, it was absolute nothing. And in fact, I even had this problem with Congress that why they are not leading this and why they should be in the forefront of this. But then when I came into this party and started trying to understand this party, I realized it is not a very straight-jacketed, controlled by one person kind of party. It is a collective which works based on who is pushing the collective. And I saw a lot of people who had that capacity and the emotional quotient to push the collective were actually outside this party, and inside the party there was a big void. So that's the reason, one of the reasons that why I chose to enter, and that's the reason I keep encouraging as many youngsters to enter, because as a formal political party, this party can be moved and pushed, and it has to be pushed, because it is the party or a movement which was created by the people and survived by people's sacrifices. So you are right in a sense, it didn't happen, but then I wouldn't try to blame it, that okay, this didn't happen. In a way, if I think, I also feel that for the last 70 years, uh, not only Congress, any mainstream political party has not been enriched by new people minds which came inside. Most of us try to stay away from mainstream politics because of whatever reason. We thought it was not good, dirty, violent, money oriented, whatever. But then that's also a reason why there is completely inaction in terms of people's issues, right? So I think I'm not in this position to blame and be angry about it, but I see what can be done and I want to do something. And many like me are, I think, ready to do. It may be Congress, left parties, anything. I think it needs a lot of fresh minds to come inside.
In fact, speaking of fresh minds, Senthil, I've been noticing people such as you. You had Mr. K. Raju. There are, I would say, in the last 10 years, several very how do I put it? Ideologically very sharp people who are almost you can say radical, as part of this the backroom strategy making team. I found I've met your team. I mean, you're somebody who's identified as a leader, but I understand there are many verticals within your communications and strategy group, and I've met different people from that formation, and all of them appear to be very radical almost in terms of their anti-caste thinking, in terms of let's say gender, in terms of caste, of course, a lot of Dalits in this strategy making team. Uh, so I suppose what has happened to an extent, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this strategy making team has come up with a very strong, hard hitting narrative or a Rahul Gandhi or even a Kharge. The teams that are working behind him, behind us is Mallikarjun Kharge. There is an entire team of people working on strategy, on communications, on research, data. His own son, Priyank Kharge, I understand, is somebody who's very, very clued into these kind of things. So there is this young bunch of people who are providing this narrative trust. Like Priyank goes after Sanatana Dharma. You talk so openly about caste. Um so that's a great thing in one way. People are getting to hear what they want to hear. But people who observe a little more sharply, like Shiv Sundar. He conveyed his regards just before this interview of yours. I interviewed Shiv Sundar. He was saying that there is a slight danger in this, maybe even subterfuge. He used the word subterfuge. He said that if the narrative is perfect and the work is not, it is actually subterfuge. It is misleading, right? So there is all this talk about Sanatana Dharma, this talk about workers' rights, labor, youth, employment, even Kashmir. Whereas in terms of, like you yourself conceded, the Congress working on the ground is not like that.
No, see, again, now, as a commentator, I can do all that, but I don't want to be in that position. I want to be the guy who gets it done, right? And when I go to get it done, I can't be, having this idea that ऐसे कैसे हो जाएगा, वैसे कैसे हो जाएगा. हमको करना है, कैसे भी करना है. That's the idea, and I want more people to come with me. I want more shoulders. That's what I am looking at. I think. There are a lot of people in Congress who are looking for more shoulders. So that's the point of view that I am looking at. So I
But
right now I don't want to be judgmental. I understand there is something which can be done, right? Right now it's the time to push the cart, and I think we can do it. And as I told you, when I was a commentator, I had the same anger. But then when uh, uh, when I am in a position, even before that, I could understand that I am part of this problem, right? It's not that I am outside this problem. I have myself not, been able to, uh, push to come inside mainstream politics for a long time. For 40 years of my life, I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't think it was possible, and I absolutely understand why that thought came, because nobody in India can think about it. It's so hard even to think about something like mainstream politics. It's like completely out of anybody's scheme of things. But even then, there were a few of us, like, us like me, completely. I had no commitments. I had all the social, thing in the world to push for it. But I somehow thought that this was not my game. When I told my friends I'm thinking of taking this plunge, there was a lot of resistance saying that, Senthil, ye kya hai? You will lose your credibility. You have now some credibility, but if you go, they will talk like this, they will talk like that. But then I realized it's a job which has to be done, irrespective of where my credibility goes. So right now I am in that position, and I think it is possible because this vehicle will move if you push it in the right direction. The keys are with us, unlike other vehicles. Those keys are not with us. I think I think we can move. It will move slowly, but it will move.
I understand that much of your job involves strategizing and communications and narrative building. And I think my next question should actually, typically be addressed to the general secretary or the president. But I hope you will be able to answer this question. How much focus is there on organization?
Putting me on a tough loop now. Right? Okay.
No, no, no. I'm just wondering how much focus is there inside the Congress on building organizational or rebuilding organizational pillars. When I say pillars, I mean elements like the NSUI, which is the students' organization, or the INTUC, which is the trade union. This thing, you do not have any great SC/ST organization, so to speak of, right? Or you have a women's wing, you have an SC/ST cell, but these are the fundamentals. And in a sense, if you look at, if you compare the BJP, its mass organizations are really the ones who amplify its work, who are able to go and implement its agenda, whatever the divisive agenda might be. They're able to implement that agenda almost remotely through their mass organizations. How much of focus is there in the Congress to build mass
So organization.
rather than if you'll allow me to say, please don't take it in the wrong way, rather than piggyback on mass organizations, is there any thought to build a mass
See,
organizations?
I would, in fact, I would say that organization is absolutely important. Without organization, there's nothing. Like I said, there has to be narrative, there has to be an organization, and there has to be leadership. That's the three parts of the political system. And organization is something which we really have to work with. But then there are challenges, inherent challenges, because there are vested interests in organizational development, right? So it will require some more time to push for it. But like outside, the fight is also on, inside Congress for, rebuilding organizations, pushing for things. And there has always been a very healthy look at all these things since the day, BJP came to power. I should say that. But at the same time, these organizations take a lot of time to build. Leaderships also have to be built parallelly. Uh, one thing I would say is that there is super focus and super clarity on this, especially the way that we are trying to do it. I'm not going into the details of it, but then the leadership right now is absolutely interested and looking forward to it. And also, I would tell you, I also have a feeling it may not take a long time, because the cadre is there. We need to make the right connections and the right, you know uh, the blood to flow into that, and then it will start. We just need that, and it might happen much sooner than what I actually think about. But this is where work is going on, right? And coming to this fight against fascism as such, I think it is in that sense. I don't think there's a difference between people's organization and political parties. That's my personal belief. I think we all have to join hands here. There's no point in, you know, uh, differentiating things. I think it's about democracy is about questions, and it's if the questions will have to come from the people, either they are in the party or outside the party, and it's a healthy thing for the democracy. I wouldn't say it's a very bad thing. I think the healthiest thing which could happen to us is that the people's movements which has happened in the last few years has really shown everybody that the people of this country and the spirit of this country still survives. In that way, I am very happy. But as a foremost political party which has these value systems as its is a frontal identities, then I think Congress should also move, and it is moving. It will move, and it will happen, and the organizational refurbishments will happen much sooner than what we think.
Right. The one area in which refurbishment, so to speak, you use the word refurbishments. The one area in which that appears to have happened is, like I said earlier, in the narrative building, in the agenda setting, and also in the electoral machine. One of the things that is said both, and this is funny, both in your praise and in your criticism, there's one thing that is said, which is that here's a man who has, managed to, oil up a machine. The electoral machine, is something that people such as you who have gotten into the nuts and bolts of it and repaired it from there. For example, something as simple as last time during the Karnataka elections, a lot of people are talking about a variety of things which led to the victory. And people in your team who I spoke to said that sometimes it comes down to something as simple as booth level management, simple as getting that booth worker, Congress party worker to be in every booth and make sure that they are there from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. Because a lot of things can go wrong or right in that process. So that is said in your praise, saying that this is something you have trained MLAs and their teams across the country. In some sense, you are a secular version of a Prashant Kishore or a progressive version of a Prashant Kishore. Don't take offense. But the point over here, nevertheless, is that you've made the electoral machine uh, very, very efficient. Now, the criticism is that you have, you know, bureaucratically managed the party. You have managed to repair the election machine. You have not managed to repair the party. And I suppose there is some merit in that. When you yourself say that there's so much work to be done in the middle of mass organizations, would you agree with that? The praise and the criticism that comes with this thing of building electoral machine.
Yeah. So you know, for the for the past 2-3 years since I've started working with this, I have not spoken much. And whatever is made out of what people perceive it to be. But let me tell you that I am not the guy who is responsible for anything. I am a part of the entire system. It might be a cliched thing to say, but it's a fact. I know from my heart. It is not me who teaches people, right? But I'll tell you where my advantage comes from. And
You have created modules, right? You have created training modules.
that's all okay, but political people don't get trained by modules. They get a spark and they move. But I'll tell you where I am. I am also politically very weak. Let me tell you very this man, I'm not this political brain, and I'm certainly not Prashant Kishore to rejig, and I have no idea about what is what. But I'll tell you where my contribution is. I have deep love for the organization. This is something which I have developed for the last 2 years. For me, the cadre who is sitting in a village holding this Congress badge in his heart, for me, he is my love. I love the cadre. I love my organization. So that brings in a lot of energy. So all the models that I have built is all about connections. That's why I stopped calling it a war room and started calling it a connect center, because we started connecting to our people. Now, if that is organizational revival, I think yes, that level I have contributed and I'll continue contributing. But I am not certainly not the guy who gives the strategy and tries to find out who should join with whom, who should be poached and all those things. I'm not the guy, but I am this organizational person because I have more than a sense of responsibility, a sense of love to the organization. So that is where my contribution comes, and whatever work I do reflects that, and that travels much faster than any training modules. That's how it works. Yeah.
But you can't hide behind that now. You're a lawmaker, and this next period of 5 years, I hope, will give us a better idea of where your ideological leanings are. Because a lot of your, I'm hoping that there will be a lot of focus from your side on making interventions in Parliament. Uh, is a private member's bill somewhere on the horizon for you? What ways are you looking to participate in the Parliament? Tell me about that. Because here, you cannot hide behind an organizational man.
No,
You
no,
have
no,
to
no, no.
be a
I'm
man, right?
again trying to understand the ways and means of the parliament. Yeah, there are rules, regulations, and all those things we see in the paper, but how it functions is something which I'm very silently observing, right? But I am not me. I am this voice. I have gone through a particular system. I've gone through a particular group of people who I think I represent, right? I represent all those voices. It's not just Tiruvallur that I represent. I represent every friend, every person that I emote with, and my voice will be absolutely for that. Irrespective of the way I believe the Congress Party will give me that space to say what I have to say, and I'm sure I will be raising all these issues. It might be embarrassing sometimes, whatever it is, but that's how it is going to be. But in whatever way, be it questions or be it motions, I'm not going to flinch. I will be absolutely raising these questions in whatever way it is possible.
And in raising these questions, I sometimes wonder if you will be brought in a way in conflict with people who are your allies. Because you're from Tamil Nadu, and good, you reminded me of that. Once again, because I don't know if you've noticed what has happened in the last week, 10 days in Tamil Nadu with the murder of Armstrong. You know, and one would imagine that somebody from Tamil Nadu will raise the issue in Parliament. And if you were to do that, there is only that much damage control you can do for your ally. Just before this, when we were warming up this interview, I asked you, where you were busy, and you said that you were busy with the Tamil Nadu government's uh, midday meals, the school meals program, and you referred to them as we. We were busy with this thing. So that's how close you are to the DMK. But then there are these contradictions in the first half of the interview you spoke about. How do you address this, and how do you address this Tamil Nadu caste conundrum?
See, of course there will be issues which will have to be dealt with. When I'm saying I am associated with something, I am saying it with complete understanding of what it is, right? And as I told, without BJP, this alliance also would not have been ideologically possible. Now this alliance is now sitting in a very clear cut ideological realm that we have to fight this majoritarian politics. Now, a government we can always fight, but we can't fight a government which is trying to peddle hatred inside societies, right? Then the societies will fight within themselves, and that's going to be collateral damage. Right now, our fight is over that, and I am very clear this fight is absolutely important. And then there will be a time when we will fight corruption, we will fight everything else. But if we lose track of what this fight is, and I think we will be failing as representative leaders, whatever you call. So I am very focused there, and I am absolutely clear that I will have to drive that fight, and there will be compromises which we have to make because of whatever fight we have taken up. We are very clear about that. Our conscience is clear about that. We do have our our inner self talking to us. Yes, this should be spoken about, but then we'll have to wait. We'll have to see what it is. So I will take that blame and have to move forward because I am very clear that my fight is right now with this area, and I'm going to stick with it. and I'm going to get as many allies as possible, parties, non-parties, civil societies who I don't agree with or agree with, but we got to fight this. Whoever is going to fight this. Yes, and coming to this idea of being close with some ideology, I am not close with any ideology except the ideology that I think is the Constitution of India. The party which I feel which is in the front is what I am associated with. But my love and my allegiance goes to the Constitution of India.
Right. So it's interesting you mentioned that, but basically what you're pointing towards is that this is a time when there's a lot of need for pragmatism and to build these larger coalitions. Uh, while you speak of that, I understand that you take a lot of interest in international relations. And today in a globalized world, everything that happens here has an impact in Europe, in countries such as Latin in the US, because the South Asian diaspora or the Indian diaspora is a very influential population in these countries, and vice versa, right? That what happens there has an impact over here. How do you read what happened in the UK elections and the French elections, right? Or what is happening for that matter in the US, where on one side you have the far right, you might have a Trump kind of character in the US, the far right in France, you have the conservatives in UK, and in response what has emerged is what you speak of, some kind of a formation which is not the opposite of the far right, which is the far left, or let's say progressive. It has come up as some kind of a compromise formula. Do you see this as a global trend, as a transition out of the period of far right politics,
No,
interim
no,
period?
not interim period, right? You see, I go back to what Hannah Arendt said about totalitarianism. She said, "Boss, if this is the way you're going to run democracy, in another 50 years you get 100 Hitlers, right?" So a democracy has become meaningless to people in the way we are running it as political parties and political systems, right? If you take in India for instance, a citizen only recognizes his privilege with democracy during a vote, right? Everybody comes to him, everybody, he's in the center of it. Other than that, after that is over, he can't even go and meet a local MLA, or he cannot even take a pipeline to his house. So democracy doesn't mean anything to them except that electoral period, right? Now, if this is the way democracy is run, why would people identify with democracy? Tell me. Now, there's a big identity-less crisis, which Hannah really pointed. She called it the identity-less mass. Now, they'll become identity-less, and then comes a Pied Piper who will come and give a new identity, and they'll all go behind him, right? So the perfect antidote to this right wing idea is to have a democracy in which people identify themselves with. People celebrate that concept because they're getting something out of it. Right now, for the last 50 years, 60 years, this has not happened due to many reasons. To capitalist society, to the way governments have power concentration, everything. Now, this is going to be a fight between right wing and left wing, for right wing and whatever what we call as left or democratic system or secular system. This fight is going to go on for the next couple of years until the democratic systems prove that they are worthy enough for people to follow, right? That includes a lot of narrative setting, that includes a lot of celebration of democracy. Like today we are celebrating the constitution. Now, how did this come up and why this was not done in the last 50 years? It was only the Dalits who carried the constitution in their hand, talking about Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Nobody else talked. Now everybody is trying to talk. Not everybody, yeah, huge chunk. So these are the kind of celebrations that we had to do to show people what you get out of democracy, and not only show, but then demonstrate that caliber of politicians. Everybody, everything has to be there. So I think it will take some time for the democratic principles to come back, or maybe a new, a world view of many things. But I would say until the democratic forces demonstrate, like say Congress coming back to power, after we come back to power, if we don't demonstrate what people have got through democracy, we don't celebrate it, then again there's no attachment which is going to come out of it. So I feel it's absolutely coming to power is only not the important thing, but coming to power with the right people and the right agenda and the right work plan is absolutely important. So I think in this manner, if the party is working towards it, I think that is a great thing to do. We are training ourselves, we are building our organizations, we're getting our ideologies right, we're getting the right leaders in. I think we will be able to, if at all, whenever we come back to power, we'll be able to deliver. Okay, talking about the larger, the UK and France, that's the same thing which is going to happen. It's going to be crisscross. Take US. Yes, last tenure we thought Trump is out. Now he's back. Now, so this is going to happen for some time until the democratic forces show why they should be there and celebrate the identity of what becomes a democracy.
Yeah, and I like the way you ended when you said it is up to democratic forces to show what they can do with democracy, show what they can do when they do come to power, right? And that is where I suppose some of the activists or the movements and the grassroots activists, that's where their fear comes from, saying, here we are, we campaigned, we put boots on the ground, and Biden won, and then look at what Biden does in the case of Palestine, right? Or we look at UK, we see the defeat of these right wing forces, but who emerges? Somebody like a Starmer. A Starmer is supposed to be a conservative who said things like, "We'll send back immigrants in aeroplanes to Bangladesh." you know and there's another interesting element, and I want you to dwell upon this, which is common between what happened in UK and what happened in India in the elections, which is the taking for granted of the Muslim vote, right? Now in the in the UK elections also, the Muslim vote was supposedly taken for granted, saying that this is anyway coming, we have to get that extra cream on top, that froth on top, which is the conservative who is incumbent. The conservative who now is a little fed up with the earlier option is looking for something new. Right? In India, if you look at how the elections were run by the entire opposition, in a Maharashtra, don't think you had even a single Muslim candidate. Even the style of campaigning, right? Your star campaigner Kanhaiya Kumar goes to those parts of Delhi which were affected by the riots, and he doesn't speak about the riots at all. He doesn't speak about the issues of the Muslims. In this pragmatism, in this you use the word compromise, and I would use a better term for it, which is pragmatism. In this pragmatism, how much do we lose out? Do we sometimes run the threat of losing out on our core issues?
No, but see, the pragmatism also has, a very, it can't be used to justify everything, right? Politically also, I don't think it's a very good strategy to be not be talking about your electorate, the people who are voting for you, and if you don't stand with them, it's politics 101, and whoever you might antagonize, but you are not talking about the people who you are uh, going to vote, who are voting for you, then that's not the case. But many other cases, it's also misunderstood, in a way that this is not happening. That is also a problem, that when people see from outside, they start thinking that are kuch nahi ho raha hai aise. But sometimes that's also not the complete fact. A person stands and fights Modi every day, and he's in the crossfire of his this thing. We cannot just say that he's not talking about it. There might be 100 reasons, but I don't think that should be the judgment. But still, I agree with a larger group. I have known people who deliberately don't do that, but I don't prescribe to that. I think you have to first talk about people who are standing with you politically also. I'm not talking about morally. I'm not going morally anywhere, but I'm even saying politically. And if you don't be with the people that care about you and who are with you, then I don't think it's right politics. And then comes the bigger moral angle, which is absolutely cannot be justified in any ways.
But what about representation, Senthil? When we talk about Muslims, how difficult now as a strategist? Tell me, as a strategist, is it bad strategy to field a Muslim candidate? I'm going to ask you bluntly: Is
No,
it bad strategy
no,
today?
not at all. In the sense, You know,
Why didn't we not see enough Muslim candidates? What's happening? Because in the case of SC candidates or ST candidates, or even for that matter OBC candidates, there is a certain in the SC ST category you're bound to do it, so you have to. There is no way around it. In the case of the OBCs, they're so electorally influential that they may make sure that there are enough numbers of OBC leaders. In the case of Muslims, we find absolutely no candidates.
no, I wouldn't take that allegation about the Congress party right now. Maybe in a coalition there was other compulsions, but as a party, Congress party is very clear about giving representation to Muslims at least. That's not the question. I can give you the numbers and how many of them won and other things. But I agree there is a problem in the Congress, not only the Congress party, many parties, that representation, the parties do not demonstrate their value systems which they preach, right? Where is the representation for women? Where is the representation for Dalits? Where is the representation for scheduled tribes? And even if you see Dalits, there will be one category which will take everything, or tribes there will be one person which tribes is already in the form. So there's this representation crisis, and Congress party recognizes this, and we have been discussing this. There is a big uh, kind of argument, counter argument. There is a fight for representation within the party also, and that I think has reflected to a large extent in this election. And like going down the line, it will happen more in a better way. Last UP election also, I think there was a 50% representation given to women. So there are experiments happening within the party. There is movement and counter movement, and I'm sure Congress party will move forward. There's no second thought about it. Not only in candidature, but also in party positions. People who become the face of the party in terms of spokespersons, in terms of many other things, there is going to be a huge overall. That's there. That's on the cards.
As a strategist, one of the things that you do is you're very invested in social.
Okay, Sudipto, I'm going to intervene and say I'm not a strategist. I am an organizational guy. I am an organizational guy. I work with the organization, and a lot of people, good minds, give us strategies, but I prefer to be the organizational man.
An organization.
Yeah.
Okay. As an organizational man, anybody who's in politics, I suppose the first thing that they try to do is understand the psychology of the people. We were talking about the Hindu left earlier, or the progressive Hindu, or the non-Sanghi Hindu. But do you think the progressive Hindu still is a little uncomfortable with a Muslim candidate in today's India? I'm not asking this as a Congress question or whatever. Do you think we have become so divided as to be uncomfortable with a Muslim?
No. See, the progressive Hindu, if the person is able to get out of this idea of caste, I don't think that person is going back to its hierarchical roots, or any kind of in-group, out-group systems and all that. Yeah, there are some places in the country where there has been history, and that history has really been violent, and but the vast majority of this country is not like that. Like for example, I worked in Mangalore, and people keep telling in Mangalore, people are, yeah, there has been a fear created by the political parties, but on the road you don't see them, over each other's throat. They are like all mama macha, everything's in the normal time. It's absolutely, the normal time, it's absolutely normal for everybody to stay in a friendly way. So I don't think the progressive Hindu, so to say, is worried about any Muslim domination or Muslim candidature.
Right. So, Senthil, now, if you'll allow me, I have these two questions. I wanted to ask this to you forever. Perhaps because you came up with that slogan of Jai Bhim, there's some kind of an affinity I might feel towards you, because there are a lot of people who answer to that call, and it is with that invocation that I want to ask you a two-part question. Number one, what do you think happened to the BSP? The Bahujan Samaj Party, Mayawati, it has this whole glorious tradition. What do you think has happened to that party? It was the original party which popularized that slogan Jai Bhim, right? So, what's your analysis? What happened?
So, as I would tell you, my analysis is not that great about political parties because I think there's a lot of complex factors, and I, being the thick of the things, unfortunately, I've now come to a conclusion that this easy inference is not the right thing to do. But then one has to do it, and then my analysis is this that. Uh, Somewhere the collective idea has gone out of BSP. In every organization there's a collective idea, an idea of what we are, idea of what Tamil Nadu is, an idea of what Congress is, an idea of what. So that collective idea has been lost in BSP is what I felt, and it is just overtaken by some leaders, and the collective is not able to come back. That generally happens with political parties, which is very leader centric, and or a very so that kind of if the values of discussions and debates are not encouraged within an organization, it tends to go towards this. And right now, I don't see the BSP, voicing out politically or on outside the electoral sphere for anything which is very significant. But look at the beauty and the innocence of the people. They still stick on to the system, and they feel that that they are with them. But this time, I think many of them have shifted a little towards where they think the other solutions might come from. So I think in any political party, especially parties like Congress and BSP, our voters have always been the people who have been on the margins. People who have always um they have been our dedicated voters, and if we don't speak for them, then it's bad. Not only morally bad, it's bad politics. So I think BSP also realizes. Hope it realizes it soon. But the also we have to understand we're currently facing a fascist fellow. They don't believe, they try to arm test you, they try to, lure you, they tried everything on the under the sky to do something to you, and then if you just give in to it, then they will just overpower you and kill you. That's how they first come and put their hands on your shoulders, treat you like your friend, and then in no time you will see a knife behind your back. That's how they've been doing, and in every state they have found one partner like that. And I don't think BSP realize. I hope it realizes such a great party and such a great you know movement, that it realizes and brings back that collective voice.
Right. This realization you speak of, was there some kind of realization you think within the party which kind of led it to elect, not select, elect a leader like Mallikarjun Kharge as the president? How much? So that was my part two of the question, really. On one side, we there is this very casteist kind of commentary around Mr. Kharge that he is some kind of a token, that he's somebody who's a placeholder and things like that. But I've heard from a lot of Congress people that there has been a shift in culture ever since he took over, right? And when we talk about that slogan, Jai Bhim, right? Now that Jai Bhim element in the Congress is largely a contribution of Mr. Kharge, is what I've heard. How much of that is true, and what do you make of it?
Khargeji is, is larger than life. He's a huge Congress person. So, calling him a token is like, is always, people have this idea about some organizations without knowing it well, right? That happens to every organization. See, every left organization is seen as, something very radical, very, very violent and stuff. See, all these perceptions are there inside Congress, outside Congress. Also, this perception of being controlled by some people. No, that's not the case. That's what I have found out myself, that when I went inside, there's nobody is in control. It's a collective thing. It's like who pushes it well gets it. So Karkeji was a collective call. Karkeji was also a leadership requirement, and Congress has moved towards that requirement. And there was this huge question on Congress's credibility on what it is saying. And what better way than with the senior most leader? Even before becoming Congress president, he was the leader of opposition. So on the floor. So Karkeji, if you hear his history, where he comes from, he can never be a token. He is full of life. He is a person who can move the organization like this. In fact, in this election, the X factor was Karkeji. He was there day in and day out doing 3 meetings, 4 meetings with us with Rahul ji and Priyanka ji leading from other fronts. So absolutely thrilled to have him as the Congress president. And he's a very witty and a humorous person also. He can move and he can just have fun, push the organization. So absolute pleasure to work under him as the Congress president, and it's very refreshing, and also at the same time it's very bad, very also very not nice when people tell that he is just a token. No, that's not the case. Within the party, he is a great stalwart, and everybody listens to him. Everybody has 5% of what his political knowledge is. So he's a great influence and a leadership to the party.
Yeah, and I hope that we will have him also on this show, because recently, just before the elections, I had done a piece, a long profile of his, in which I spoke to a variety of people about his career. He came across as a very interesting person. Hopefully, we'll have him on this show as well. But Sendil, I wish we had more time to talk to you and discuss things in more depth. But this is a lot of time that you've spared with us. I understand there are a lot of people waiting outside as we speak who've come to meet you from remote parts of the country, and that goes with the job of being an MP, I'm guessing. But this time, this 1 hour that you've given us is very valuable. Thank you so much. And I suppose when you have spent a little bit of time in Parliament, I'm going to ask you a few, maybe a more tough line of questioning, perhaps. But for now, good luck with your new stint as an MP. Thank you so much for being on What's Your Name.
Thank you for the show, I should say, and also, express my gratitude for for this wonderful 1 hour of very insightful, very sharp questions. And I think these are the interactions and discussions I think will push us forward in this fight. Thanks a lot, and let's keep these discussions coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That's all for this episode. See you next time.